Welcome back to Cheating Wives Among Us. His three closest friends stopped showing up to their Saturday fishing trips. No explanation. Just gone. All one of them would say was, "Talk to your wife." What he found wasn't just an affair, it was a felony. Let's get into it. So here's the thing about load-bearing walls. You can't see them, not really. You walk through a house and you see drywall, paint, a light switch, maybe a crack you keep meaning to spackle. But behind all that, there's a wall doing the only job that matters, holding everything above it in place. You can tear out every pretty thing in a house, rip out the floors, gut the kitchen, sledgehammer the tile. The house stands, but you take out one load-bearing wall without knowing what you're doing, and the whole thing comes down so fast you won't even hear it go. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand how I think. Not because I'm trying to impress you. I'm an architect, that's all. I draw buildings. I think in structures. And when my life started collapsing, I didn't reach for a drink or put my fist through a wall. I reached for a pencil and started sketching the problem because that's the only thing I've ever known how to do. My name is Nathan Cooper. I'm 34. I live in Minneapolis, and about 18 months ago, I found out that the woman I'd been married to for 7 years had been slowly, methodically, almost artistically dismantling my entire life, and I didn't notice until my own twin brother walked into my office looking like he hadn't slept in 4 days and said the words that cracked the whole thing open. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me set the stage for you first. January in Minneapolis. You know what that's like? It's not romantic. It's not a Hallmark movie with scarves and hot chocolate. It's dark by 4:30, the wind comes off the lakes like it's got a personal grudge, and you spend half your life scraping ice off windshields. But I loved it. I loved our neighborhood, Linden Hills, south side of the city, the kind of place where people walk their dogs at 7 a.m. and wave even when it's 10 below. I loved our house, a 1920s bungalow that Ashley and I had renovated together the first year we were married, back when she still cared about things like original molding and whether the kitchen had enough natural light. I was a rising guy at Whitfield and Lane, architecture firm, good one. I'd designed a community library the year before, small project, but it won a regional award and my name was on it. My boss, Denise Whitfield, had started mentioning words like associate partner in meetings, looking at me when she said them. I was good at my job, quiet about it, but good. And then there was Olivia, my daughter, 4 years old, the kind of kid who asks you why the sky is blue and then actually listens to your answer and asks a follow-up. She had Ashley's eyes and my stubbornness, and every single thing I did, every late night at the drafting table, every smile I held when I didn't feel like smiling, I did for her. The marriage looked fine from the outside, 7 years in, and we still cooked together on Sundays, still went to the farmer's market, still hosted the occasional dinner party where Ashley would charm the room, and I'd pour the wine and think, yeah, this is good. This is what people mean when they talk about building a life. But there was something, a hum, like when a refrigerator starts making that noise you can't quite place. You don't know what it is, but the house doesn't sound right anymore. Ashley had started redecorating, not in a fun, Pinterest project way. She redid the living room twice in 3 months, bought new throw pillows, returned them, bought different ones. She joined a new gym, not the one 3 blocks away that she'd gone to for years, but one across town. She started talking about finding herself, which is one of those phrases that sounds healthy but can mean almost anything, including things you don't want to look at too closely. I noticed. Of course I noticed, but I told myself it was a phase. People go through phases. You don't interrogate your wife because she bought new curtains. My brother Dylan was staying with us that month. He's my twin, identical, which matters later, and he's the version of me that took every left turn I took right. Freelance graphic designer, which is a nice way of saying he worked when he felt like it and panicked about rent the rest of the time. Divorced once already from a marriage that lasted 11 months. Charming as all get out. The kind of guy who walks into a party knowing 6 people and leaves knowing everyone. I loved him. I also slipped him $2,000 that January without Ashley knowing because his car needed a transmission and he'd rather starve than ask directly. Here's the thing that should have set off alarms and didn't. Ashley used to hate Dylan's visits, used to hate them. Your brother is a black hole, she'd say. He'll drag you down with him. She'd get tight-lipped the second he walked through our door, counting the days until he left. But sometime around 6 months before all this, around the previous summer, something flipped. She started inviting him over, asking when he'd visit next, cooking his favorite meals for God's sake, brisket. The woman never made brisket in 7 years of marriage, and suddenly she's slow cooking a brisket for Dylan because he mentioned he missed good barbecue. I was so grateful. I told a coworker, I remember this, leaning against the break room counter, actually smiling. I think Ashley finally gets it. Family is family. I said those words. I believed them. And at work, there was Jared Kellen, 36, senior architect, recently separated from his wife. He was the kind of guy who was always slightly overdressed, always slightly too eager to agree with whoever had seniority in the room. We weren't close, but we were friendly. Lunch twice a week, shop talk, the occasional beer after a late project night. He'd complimented my library design at a meeting. Really solid work, Nathan. Clean lines. I'd said thanks and thought nothing else about him. Ashley had met Jared at 2 firm events. 2? I thought nothing of that either. That's the setup. That's the picture on the postcard. Nice house, good job, pretty wife, sweet kid, brother in from out of town, everything a man's supposed to want. And every night after I'd fall half asleep, Ashley would be on her phone, typing fast, smiling at the screen in the blue light, and whenever I'd stir, shift a pillow, roll over, that phone would lock so fast you'd think it was spring-loaded. I didn't notice. But if you'd been watching, you would have. It was a Thursday, late February. I remember because there was a blizzard warning, and the office was half empty, and I was at my desk working on specs for a mixed-use building downtown, and Dylan walked in without calling first. He didn't look right. His face was the color of old cement. He had circles under his eyes, so dark they looked painted on, and he was wearing the same flannel I'd seen him in 3 days earlier. He closed my office door, sat down in the chair across from my desk, and put his hands between his knees like he was trying to keep them from shaking. "We need to talk," he said, "and you're going to want to hit me, but I need you to hear everything first." I set my pencil down. I didn't say anything. I just waited. That's something people don't understand about me. I'm not the kind of man who fills silence. Silence is useful. Silence is where people tell you what they actually mean. Dylan couldn't look at me. He talked to the floor. Ashley had been texting him. It started about 3 weeks earlier. Small stuff at first. How's Portland? Have you been to that new ramen place? Saw this meme and thought of you. Normal sister-in-law territory. Then it shifted. She started telling him she felt alone, that things with me were complicated, that she needed someone to talk to who understood her. Dylan said he should have stopped it there, and he's right, he should have. But he didn't. He was lonely. He'd been between relationships for a year, and his brother's wife was telling him he was the only one who really listened. And that felt good, and he hated himself for how good it felt, but he didn't stop. The texts got flirtatious, then more than flirtatious. Then she suggested the Hewing Hotel downtown a Tuesday afternoon while I'd be at work and Olivia would be at preschool. That's when Dylan finally pulled back. That's when whatever was left of his conscience grabbed him by the collar and shook. "I didn't sleep with her," he said. "I swear on my life, Nathan, I didn't, but I flirted back for 3 weeks. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." You know what I felt? It wasn't rage, not yet. It was more like the feeling you get when you step onto what you think is solid ground and your foot goes through. That lurch, that instant where your brain is still processing what your body already knows. I asked one question: why are you telling me now instead of 3 weeks ago? He still couldn't look at me. Because I was selfish, and I'm sorry. Show me the messages. He handed over his phone. I read them, all of them. It took about 15 minutes. He sat there the whole time, not moving, barely breathing, and here's where the floor really dropped out, because I wasn't just reading flirtation. I was reading a story about a man named Nathan Cooper who didn't exist. In her messages to my brother, Ashley had written things like, "He screamed at me again last night over nothing. I have never raised my voice at that woman, not once, not in 7 years. I was a college wrestler. I know what it feels like when adrenaline turns into something ugly, and I have spent my entire adult life making sure I never go there. He monitors my spending. I have to justify every purchase. We've had separate bank accounts since day one. It was her idea. I couldn't tell you what she spent on groceries last month if you put a gun to my head. Sometimes I'm scared of him. I have never slammed a door, never broken a dish, never grabbed her arm, never blocked a doorway, never even raised my hand near her in anger. Nothing. Zero. My daughter has never heard a raised voice in our house because there hasn't been one. Ashley wasn't just trying to sleep with my brother. She was building a version of me, a dark, distorted copy, and she was planting it in Dylan's head so that when the time came, he'd be another voice in the chorus, another person who'd nod and say, "Yeah, Nathan, he's got problems." I put the phone down. My hands were steady. My jaw was so tight I could hear my own teeth. "Leave," I said, not mean, just flat. Like I'd used up all my words and there weren't any more. "Nathan, I need to think." He left. I sat there in my office for an hour staring at the wall, and I thought about every building I'd ever worked on and how the ones that came down weren't the ones with the biggest flaws. They were the ones where nobody noticed the flaw until it was too late. I didn't confront Ashley. I want you to understand why, because I know how it sounds. Most guys, you tell them their wife is trying to seduce their brother and making up abuse stories. They blow up. They walk in the door and start shouting, and the whole thing becomes a mess that ends with both people saying things they can't take back, and a lawyer on each side picking through the rubble. I didn't do that because I'm not most guys, and also because I'm not stupid. Ashley had spent months, maybe longer, building a narrative in which I was the bad guy. If I walked in screaming, I wouldn't be proving her wrong. I'd be proving her right. One outburst, one slammed door, one voice raised in anger, and every lie she'd told would suddenly look like truth. So I did what I do. I observed. I paid attention. I started keeping notes. And once I started looking, really looking, it was everywhere. A phone call with her mother. I was in the next room, sorting laundry. Ashley's voice, bright and concerned. "Yeah, Mom, Nathan had 3 beers last night. I'm a little worried." I'd had one. A single beer. With dinner. A beer I didn't even finish because I'd gotten a work call halfway through. A conversation with her friend Tara that I caught the tail end of as I came through the front door. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything is fine." Then she heard the door, hung up, turned around, and smiled at me like I'd hung the moon. "Hey, babe, what do you want for dinner?" 3 years earlier, that smile would have melted me. Now it made something cold settle in my chest. I started a document, not on my computer, on a USB drive I kept in my desk drawer at the office. Dates, times, direct quotes when I could remember them, discrepancies between what she said and what actually happened. I was meticulous about it. I wrote down only facts, no interpretation, no emotion, just the data, like I was drafting specifications for a building I'd never actually want to live in. And I started watching Jared Kellen, not obviously, just noticing. Jared, who used to eat lunch with me twice a week, suddenly always had other plans. Jared, who used to make easy eye contact across the conference table, now studied his laptop screen whenever I looked his way. Jared, who started taking personal calls in the stairwell instead of at his desk. I didn't react. I filed it away. One evening, Ashley said she was going to yoga, her Tuesday class, 7 to 8:30. I kissed her goodbye, put Olivia to bed, and then I got in my car and drove to the studio. I parked across the street. Her car wasn't there. The studio was lit up. I could see people through the windows, stretching, rolling out mats. None of them were my wife. I drove home, wrote down the date and time, did the same thing the next Tuesday. And the one after that, and the one after that. 4 Tuesdays, 4 empty parking spots where her car should have been. That night, the 4th Tuesday, I went into Olivia's room after she was asleep. She was curled up with a stuffed raccoon she'd named Bandit, her mouth slightly open, her breath making that little whistle sound kids make when they're out cold. I stood there for a long time. I didn't whisper anything dramatic. I didn't make a speech to a sleeping 4-year-old, but something locked into place in me that night. A decision. Not emotional, structural. The foundation was compromised, and I was going to have to figure out which walls could be saved and which ones had to come down. 2.5 months before everything broke open, I drove to Ashley's mother's house. Linda lived in Adena, in a split level with too many decorative pillows and a refrigerator covered in Olivia's drawings. I brought a stack of Olivia's latest artwork as a pretense. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee, and she was being sweet. She's always sweet, Linda, even when she's worried, and she was worried. I could see that right away. Ashley told me you've been under a lot of stress, she said halfway through her second cup. Drinking more. I'm worried about you, Nathan. I put my coffee down, set it down carefully like it was something that could break. Linda, I had a physical last month, full blood work. My liver function is perfect. My doctor says I'm the healthiest 34-year-old he sees. I don't drink. She got that look. You know the one, when someone has 2 truths in front of them, and they can't both be real, and the ground between them is just a long, dark crack they don't want to look down into. She changed the subject, started talking about Olivia's preschool program. But I saw it land. I saw the doubt. I also called Tara Mitchell. Ashley's best friend since college, the kind of woman who'd been in our wedding, who came to every birthday party, who Ashley texted 40 times a day. I called her about planning a surprise for Ashley's birthday. Total fabrication. But I needed to hear what Tara knew. Tara was nervous on the phone, awkward in a way she'd never been with me before, and then she said something that told me everything. I just want you to know, Nathan. Ashley talks to me, and I think maybe you two should see a counselor. I pushed gently. What does she say? Long pause, then. That you're emotionally distant, that you can be controlling, that she's staying for Olivia. I thanked her, hung up, added her to my document, 4 people, my brother, her mother, her best friend. And I was pretty sure Jared made 5. 5 separate people who had been handed a version of my marriage that bore no resemblance to the one I was living in. 5 witnesses who, if anyone ever asked, would all say the same thing: poor Ashley. She tried so hard. He was terrible to her. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to my wife, who was sleeping fine, by the way, sound as a stone, and I got on my phone and started reading. I didn't even know what I was looking for at first. I typed things like spouse lying to friends about abuse and wife building false narrative before divorce. And I found it. There's a term for it in psychology circles: narrative preparation. It's when someone, usually before leaving a relationship, systematically builds a story with multiple witnesses, shaping the social landscape so that by the time the split happens, everyone already knows whose side they're on. The articles described it as a form of covert emotional manipulation, and reading them was like watching someone draw the blueprint of my own house and seeing, for the first time, where all the hidden rooms were. This wasn't a woman who got lonely and made a mistake. This wasn't someone who fell for the wrong guy and felt guilty about it. This was a project, a long-term, multi-phase project, and I was the building she was planning to demolish. Let me tell you about the moment I knew Jared was in it. Staff meeting, about 2 months before the dinner. We were reviewing a client's renovation, old office building, structural issues, the usual. Jared was presenting, pointing at drawings on the screen, and in the middle of explaining why the foundation needed to be replaced, he said, casually, like it was nothing, "Yeah, it's like what you deal with at home, Nathan. Sometimes you just have to tear out the whole foundation and start over." Nobody else in the room blinked. It was a throwaway line, office banter, but I felt it land in my sternum like a dart. What you deal with at home. I have never, not once, not ever, discussed my home life with Jared Kellen. I don't do that. I don't bring my personal world into the office. So there was exactly one way Jared could know anything about what I dealt with at home, and it wasn't through me. I started watching him more carefully after that, and once you know what to look for, it's insulting how careless people are. Jared took personal calls at the same time Ashley's calendar showed coffee with friend. Jared wore a scarf one day, a nice one, gray cashmere, from a brand I recognized because Ashley ordered from them all the time. And I'd never once seen Jared wear anything that wasn't off a clearance rack at Nordstrom. Jared dropped a mention of a restaurant in Uptown at lunch. "I heard the tasting menu is incredible. The same restaurant Ashley and I had gone to for our anniversary." Jared Kellen didn't know what a tasting menu was 6 months ago. Someone was educating him, but I needed more than pattern recognition. I needed something solid. Here's the advantage of being an architect who works late. You have keycard access to parts of buildings that most people forget exist. Our firm's parking garage has security cameras. I pulled the footage from a Tuesday night 3 weeks back, one of the nights Ashley claimed to be at yoga. Jared's car left the garage at 5:15 p.m. I checked my log. That was one of the 4 Tuesdays her car wasn't at the studio. And then it clicked, the whole thing, like a building revealing itself in cross-section. Dylan was Plan A. Think about it, an identical twin. If Ashley and Dylan had slept together and it came out, she had options. She could cry confusion, she could say she thought it was me, she could frame it as Dylan's predatory behavior toward a vulnerable woman. Or, if it stayed secret, she'd have turned my own brother into an accomplice, someone who'd feel too guilty to ever contradict her version of events. Either way, she wins. When Dylan pulled back, she didn't panic. She pivoted. Jared was Plan B, a man already inside my professional life, already ambitious, already lonely, already a tool she could use not just personally, but strategically. Sleep with Jared, feed Jared information about Nathan's problems, and now Nathan's marriage isn't just failing at home, It's failing at work, too. She wasn't just building an exit. She was building a controlled demolition, rigged to bring down every part of my life at once. I went home that night and I sat in the dark in my kitchen for a long time. I wasn't falling apart. That's what I need you to understand. Something in me had gone cold and quiet and precise, like the moment in a wrestling match when you stop reacting and start seeing the whole mat, where your opponent is, where they're going, where they think you are, and where you actually are. The next morning, Denise Whitfield stopped me in the hallway. She's 58, built like a marathon runner, silver hair, no tolerance for nonsense. She'd founded the firm 30 years ago, and she could read people the way I read blueprints. She looked at me for a long beat and said, "Cooper, you look like you're carrying something heavy. If you need anything, my door's open," I said. "Going through some personal stuff. I'll be fine." She didn't push, just nodded. I filed that offer away. I'd need it later. 7 weeks before the dinner, I walked into the office of Dr. Rosa Figueroa for the first time, family psychologist recommended by my primary care doctor. Nice office, warm light, plants that were actually alive, a box of tissues on the table that I did not touch. I sat down and I laid it all out. Everything. The texts to Dylan, the false stories about drinking and anger and control, the yoga lie, Jared's scarf, all of it. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated more than she probably knows, because I was running on 3 hours of sleep and what was left of my composure, and if she'd started asking clarifying questions halfway through, I might have lost my thread entirely. When I finished, she sat back and took off her glasses and cleaned them on her shirt, which I think was a stalling technique to give herself a moment to organize what she wanted to say. Then she put them back on and looked at me. "What you're describing isn't just infidelity preparation," she said. "It's narrative engineering. Your wife is building a world, a consistent, populated world, in which she's the victim and you're the aggressor. By the time she files for divorce, she'll have a chorus of people who genuinely believe her version. And in a custody evaluation, Nathan, perception, is 9/10 of reality." She explained it to me plainly. In Minnesota, infidelity doesn't move the needle in a divorce. Ashley could have slept with the entire Minneapolis City Council and the court wouldn't blink. But custody is a different animal. Custody evaluators look at the best interests of the child, and they talk to everyone, friends, family, teachers, co-workers. If every person they interview says some version of Nathan drinks, Nathan yells, Nathan controls, even if none of it is true, it paints a picture. And pictures are powerful. Pictures are hard to unpaint. "She's not trying to win a court case with evidence," Dr. Figueroa said. "She's trying to win the story, so that when the evaluator sits down with her mother, her friends, her colleague, they all say the same thing. 'Poor Ashley, she tried so hard.'" I stared at her. "So what do I do? Don't confront her. Don't change your behavior. Live your real life loudly, documentably. Be the father she says you're not. Be the husband she claims doesn't exist, and get a family law attorney today, not tomorrow, today." I was standing up to leave when she said one more thing that stopped me at the door. "Nathan, in my experience, people who build narratives this elaborate don't just do it once. You might not be her first." I hadn't considered that. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, and I thought about the ex-boyfriend Ashley had mentioned a few times, a guy from college named Trevor Grant, who she always described with this faint shudder, like even saying his name left a bad taste. He was terrible to me. That's all she ever said, never details, just the label hung around his neck like a sign. I drove home thinking about Trevor Grant. The next 6 weeks were the most disciplined period of my life, and also the loneliest. I retained a family law attorney named Grant Holloway, Hennepin County, the kind of guy who wore plain suits and spoke in the calm, measured tones of someone who had seen every variation of human wreckage and had developed the professional detachment to deal with it. I liked him immediately. He didn't sugarcoat anything. "You're in a good position if you can document what you're telling me," he said, "but documentation alone isn't enough. You need to be visible. You need to be undeniable." So I became undeniable. Every video call with Olivia when I traveled for work, saved with timestamps. Every grocery run, every preschool pickup, every bedtime story. Logged. I set up a shared photo album with Linda and started posting family photos regularly. Olivia at the park, Olivia on my shoulders at the farmer's market, Olivia and me building a blanket fort on a Sunday afternoon. Linda responded with heart emojis every time, and I could almost feel the ground shifting under Ashley's story because the man in those photos didn't look like the man Ashley had been describing. I started showing up to every preschool event, art shows, parent mornings, holiday sing-alongs. I introduced myself to every teacher, every parent in Olivia's class. I wasn't performing, I was doing what I'd always done, but now I was making sure people saw it. And I kept being kind to Ashley. This part was hard, not because I wanted to be cruel, I didn't, not yet, but because she kept testing me, little jabs. A comment about Dylan, "Your brother called again. Must be nice to have someone always bailing you out." A complaint about money. "I saw the credit card bill. Do you really need another drafting program?" A sigh, heavy and theatrical, when I came home 20 minutes late from work. Every one of these was a hook, a provocation designed to get a reaction she could point to. I knew it, and so I swallowed every barb and responded with the calm warmth of a man who had absolutely nothing to hide. Because I didn't, she got frustrated. I could see it, a tightness around her eyes, a quickness to her movements, the way she'd look at me sometimes like she was waiting for something that wasn't coming. Good. Let her wait. Dylan called. He was back in Portland, drowning in guilt, and I could hear it in his voice, the ragged edge of a man who'd finally seen himself clearly and didn't like the view. "What can I do?" he asked. "Tell me what to do." "Save every message she ever sent you. Don't delete a single one. Don't tell her I know anything, and be ready when I need you." "I will. I swear. I know." I almost hung up. Then I said, "Dylan, you messed up, but you told me that matters." Silence on the line, then very quietly, "Yeah. Now here's where it gets dark, and I'm not going to apologize for what I did next because I'd do it again." I tracked down Trevor Grant, Ashley's college ex, the one she always described as emotionally abusive. I found him on LinkedIn, high school history teacher in St. Paul, which was close enough to matter and far enough away that Ashley would never have run into him. I sent him a message, kept it simple. "My name is Nathan Cooper. I'm married to Ashley Turner. I think we should talk." He agreed to meet, coffee shop in Highland Park, neutral ground. He showed up looking exactly like what he was, a regular guy, mid-30s, corduroy jacket, wedding ring, a face that had settled into the comfortable lines of someone who'd been through something bad and come out the other side. He was remarried, happy from what I could tell. We ordered coffee, we sat down. I told him I was going through a difficult time with Ashley and that I was trying to understand some things. I didn't tell him everything, not yet. I wanted to hear his story first. He was quiet for a while, stirred his coffee. Then he looked up at me and said, "Did she tell you I was abusive?" "She said you were terrible to her." He nodded like he'd heard this before, maybe in his own head 1,000 times. "She told people I hit her. I never touched her. She told my friends I was controlling. She told my parents I had a drug problem. She told the girl I was seeing after her that I'd been violent during our relationship, and that girl ghosted me overnight. He set his spoon down. By the time I figured out what was happening, everyone in my life believed her. Friends I'd had since I was 12 wouldn't return my calls. I've been in therapy for 6 years. It took me 3 years to trust my wife enough to tell her the whole story. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I was watching the blueprint of my own situation laid out in someone else's life. Same architect, same design, same demolition plan. How long were you together? I asked. 2 years. She started the campaign in the last 6 months. By the time she left, she was the victim and I was the monster, and nobody questioned it because she'd done the work. I drove home with both hands on the wheel, and I'll tell you what I felt. I felt the ground shift, not under my feet, under the whole story, because I wasn't her first project, I was the second. And knowing that changed everything, because it meant this wasn't about me. It wasn't about our marriage, or something I'd done wrong, or some failure I could fix. This was who she was. This was what she did. 4 weeks before the dinner, I needed one more piece. I needed to confirm, for my own certainty and for Grant Holloway's strategy, that Ashley and Jared were physically involved. I didn't hire anyone. I didn't bug her phone or follow her car or any of that movie nonsense. I used what I had. I'd consulted on a development project 3 years earlier, a residential building on the north side. Jared lived there. I knew the layout because I'd helped design the parking structure. I had a contact in the property management office, a woman named Beth, who owed me a favor because I'd donated time redesigning their lobby. I asked Beth, casually, professionally, if she could check the visitor parking log for a specific license plate over the last month. Ashley's plate showed up 3 times. Always on evenings, she'd told me she was with Tara or at yoga. Always for 2 to 3 hours. I added it to the document and closed the file. Then I got a call I didn't expect. Tara Mitchell, Ashley's best friend, calling me. She sounded like she was whispering, like someone might hear her. Nathan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Ashley told me you threw a plate at her last week. Did you? I sat down. I actually had to sit down, because the audacity of it, a plate of all things, as if she'd watched a movie about domestic abuse and picked the most dramatic prop, hit me like a slap. Tara, I said, come to our house right now if you want, open every cabinet, count every plate. They're all there, every single one. Long silence on the line, long enough that I could hear her breathing. Something isn't adding up, she said finally. She told me things about you, and then I saw you at Olivia's school play last week, and you were not what she described. You were in the front row with your phone out, recording the whole thing. You looked like just a dad. I am just a dad. More silence, then. I don't know what to think. Tara, I'm not going to tell you what to think, but I'd trust what you've seen with your own eyes, not what you've been told. I hung up, and I felt it, the first real crack in Ashley's wall, not one I'd made, one that was already there, just waiting for someone to notice. 2 weeks before the dinner, I sat at my desk at home, late, Olivia in bed, Ashley out for the evening, spin class allegedly, and I designed the ending, a dinner party at our house. Celebration of my promotion to associate partner, which was real, Denise had told me that week, and I'd thanked her and felt almost nothing because there were bigger things on my mind. Guest list, Dylan, Jared, Denise, Tara, and Ashley, of course, the architect of it all, sitting at the center of her own creation, watching every piece she'd moved arrive at the same table on the same night. Ashley said yes immediately. She loved hosting. She loved performing, and she had no idea that Dylan was coming. She thought he was still in Portland. She had no reason to expect Jared at a personal dinner. He was work, not social. She thought this was just another evening where she'd smile and charm and hold the room in her hand. I called Grant Holloway. "The papers ready?" "They've been ready for 2 weeks." "Good. I'll need them the morning after." I spent one evening putting together a document I called The Mirror. 40 pages, chronological, every lie Ashley had told, to whom with the actual truth beside it, dates, direct quotes, bank statements showing our separate accounts, medical records showing no alcohol abuse, preschool attendance logs, the parking records, Dylan's text messages, Jared's garage footage, Trevor Grant's written account. I didn't write it with anger. I wrote it the way I'd write a set of building specifications, precise, thorough, unemotional, facts on one side, fiction on the other. The gap between them was the whole story. I met with Dylan. He flew in the day before, stayed at a hotel downtown. We sat in the bar, and I told him the plan. "Just show up," I said. "Be yourself. Watch." "That's it?" "That's it." He was nervous. I could tell because he was fidgeting with his beer glass the way he used to fidget with his pencils in school. "What if she sees me and bolts?" "She won't bolt. She never breaks character in front of an audience." He looked at me for a long moment. "When did you get this cold?" "I'm not cold, Dylan. I'm clear. There's a difference," I also told Denise. Not everything, just the essentials. That Ashley had been unfaithful with Jared, that it had been going on for months, that Jared had used information from Ashley to try to undermine me professionally. Denise's reaction was something to see. She didn't shout. She went still, the dangerous kind of still, like a lake that's frozen solid on the surface. Then she said, "Jared came to me 2 months ago, argued you weren't ready for the partnership, said you had personal instability that made you unreliable. I dismissed it because it didn't match anything I'd seen. Now I know where he got the script." She was quiet for a beat. "Then, he used my firm to advance someone else's agenda. That's going to be addressed." "At the dinner?" "After, but I'll be there." "The night of the dinner. I want you to feel this. The house was warm. I'd cooked everything myself, roasted chicken, potatoes with rosemary, a salad Ashley wouldn't touch because she'd been cutting carbs for 3 months, candles on the table, good wine. Olivia was at Linda's for the night, which Ashley thought was my idea so the adults could relax. It was my idea, but not for the reason she thought. Tara arrived first. She was wound tight. I could see it in the way she held her purse strap, the way she kept looking around the room like she was cataloging exits. She hugged Ashley. Ashley was radiant, full wattage, the version of herself she saved for audiences. Denise came next. Firm handshake, a bottle of wine she'd probably spent actual money on, and that look she has when she's observing. Not warm exactly, but attentive. She complimented the house. She complimented Ashley's dress. She sat down and crossed her legs and waited. And then the doorbell rang, and I opened it, and Dylan walked in. I was watching Ashley when it happened. You have to understand, I was positioned for this. I was standing where I could see her face in the hallway mirror while she was facing the door, and what I saw was a master class in control. Her smile froze, not for long, maybe 2 seconds. Her eyes went sharp, then panicked, then calculating, and then the warmth slid back like a curtain being drawn over a window. "Dylan! Oh my God, I didn't know you were in town!" She hugged him. Her body was stiff as a board. Dylan, to his credit, hugged her back like nothing was wrong and said something easy about a layover that turned into a visit. Then the doorbell rang again. I opened it. Jared Kellen. Ashley's face in the mirror again. The Ashley's face in the mirror again. The color left her, just drained like someone had pulled a plug. 2 seconds, maybe 3, and then the mask was back, but it wasn't as good this time. The seams were showing. She recovered. She shook Jared's hand. She said something about how nice it was that Nathan's colleagues could join, but her voice was half a pitch too high, and her left hand, the one she thought nobody could see, was gripping the kitchen counter like she was holding on to the edge of a cliff. We sat down. We ate. I was calm. I was the calmest I'd been in 4 months, and I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. I'd spent all my anxiety on the preparation. By the time the event arrived, I was just executing the plan. I steered conversations the way you steer a boat in a slow current. Light touches, nothing forced. "Dylan, how's Portland? You seem good." And Dylan, bless him, played it perfectly. "It's been peaceful, nice to be away from complicated situations." He didn't look at Ashley. He didn't need to. The word complicated just hung there in the air. "Jared, how's the Waverly Project?" Jared was sweating. I could see a fine sheen on his forehead. He kept glancing at Ashley like a man looking for instructions that weren't coming. He stammered something about timeline adjustments. Denise watched him like a hawk watching a mouse who didn't know it was already caught. "Tara, how's the new position?" Tara answered, but her eyes kept drifting to Ashley, and I could see her running the same calculations I'd run months ago, comparing what she'd been told with what she was seeing with her own eyes. Denise held court for a while, talked about the firm, talked about values. "What I've always admired about Whitfield and Lane," she said, "is that we attract people of integrity, accountability, trust." She looked at Jared when she said the word trust. Jared's hand slipped on his wine glass. Just a little. Just enough. And then I stood up. I raised my glass. "I want to make a toast," I said, "to honesty, to the people at this table who've been honest with me even when it was hard." I looked at Dylan. He met my eyes. "And to the truth, which has a way of finding the light, no matter how carefully someone tries to bury it." The table went quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, the kind where the air itself seems to be holding its breath. I could hear the candles hissing. Ashley's hand was trembling. She set her wine glass down because she couldn't hold it steady. She excused herself to the bathroom and didn't come back for 8 minutes. The dinner wound down. People left. Tara practically ran to her car. Jared shook my hand at the door and couldn't meet my eyes, and Denise gave him a look as he walked out that would have withered concrete. Dylan squeezed my shoulder on the way out. No words. Didn't need any. And then it was just us. Ashley came out of the bathroom. She'd fixed her makeup. I noticed that. Even now, she was managing her presentation. "That was weird," she said, going on offense. "Why did you invite Jared and Dylan together?" "That was—" "I know," I said, "all of it. And we're done." I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. I walked to our bedroom, closed the door, and let her sit alone in the living room with the dishes and the candle wax and the silence. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and went to sleep. Actually slept. It was the best sleep I'd had in months. She hadn't slept. I could see it in her face when I came out in the morning. She was at the kitchen table, still in last night's clothes, coffee cold in front of her, and she had that brittle, cornered look of someone whose careful architecture had been hit by an earthquake. I sat across from her. I put 2 things on the table: the divorce petition, Grant Holloway's name and number at the top, and the mirror, all 40 pages of it. "Page 12 is what you told your mother about my drinking," I said, and "page 19 is what you told Tara about me throwing a plate. 26 is the hotel you suggested to my brother. 31 is Jared's visitor parking log. She stared at the document. Her hands were flat on the table. I could see her processing, not the information, but the angles. Even now she was calculating. "I'm not giving this to the court," I said. "I'm giving it to you, so you understand that I see you. I have seen you for months, and I'm done." The first thing she did was attack. Of course it was. "You spied on me." Her voice was low and shaking. "You went through you checked parking logs? You talked to my mother behind my back? You're exactly what I told people you were. This is controlling. This is everything in that document," I said, "is something you said to other people about me. I just wrote it down. If that feels like an invasion of privacy, maybe ask yourself why." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and for 1 second, one raw, unguarded second, I saw something behind her eyes that wasn't calculation or performance. It was surprise. Genuine surprise, because she had built her entire strategy around a version of me that was passive and blind and easy to manage, and the man sitting across from her wasn't that person. I picked up my keys. I'm going to pick up Olivia. I left her sitting at the table with 40 pages of her own reflection. Now, I want to be clear about something. Ashley didn't crumble. If you're expecting her to cry and confess and beg for forgiveness, you don't understand who she is. Ashley is not a woman who collapses under pressure. She adapts. Within 3 hours of me leaving the house that morning, she'd called a divorce attorney, Rachel Perkins, a woman with a reputation for being a pit bull in family court. She called Tara, crying, saying I'd ambushed her with lies. She called her mother, sobbing, saying I was threatening her. She called Jared and told him I was unstable and dangerous. She was doing what she always did, activating the network, running the playbook, except this time the network had cracks. Tara didn't pick up. She let the call go to voicemail. Then she sat on her couch, I found out later, and scrolled back through 2 years of text messages from Ashley, and she started seeing what she'd been too loyal to see before. Contradictions, dates that didn't align, stories that shifted in the retelling. She didn't call me, but she stopped answering Ashley, and in a war of narratives, silence is a defection. Linda called me. She was upset, confused, pulled in 2 directions. "Nathan, Ashley says you—" "Linda," I said, and I kept my voice gentle because I genuinely cared about this woman. "I'm going to send you a letter. It has my medical records and our bank statements. Please just read it. That's all I ask." I sent it that afternoon. A calm letter. I didn't trash Ashley. I wrote, "I love your daughter, but I need you to know that I have never raised my voice in our home. I have never controlled her finances, and I have never had a drinking problem. I've enclosed the records. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to look at the facts." Linda read it. I know because she called me back 2 days later and said, in a voice I'd never heard from her before, small, frightened, "Nathan, how long has she been doing this?" I didn't answer that question. I didn't need to. She already knew. Jared was the easiest domino. Denise Whitfield called him into her office the Monday after the dinner. She didn't mention Ashley by name. She just looked at him across her desk and said, "Jared, I'm going to ask you one question. Did you use personal information about Nathan Cooper's marriage to argue against his promotion?" I wasn't there for this, but Denise told me about it later. She said Jared's face went the color of skim milk. He stammered. He started to deny it. Denise raised one hand, just one hand, palm out, and he stopped. "You have 2 options," she said. "Cooperate fully and honestly, or I refer this to the firm's ethics board. Which would you prefer?" Jared cooperated, and Dylan. Dylan flew in from Portland and stayed in my guest room. And for the first time in our adult lives, the dynamic between us shifted. He wasn't the screw-up kid brother crashing on the couch. He was steady, sober, focused. He drafted a written statement for Grant Holloway. Everything Ashley had said to him, every text, every lie about me she'd embedded in their conversations. He worked on it for 2 days, going back through his phone, pulling up messages, double-checking dates. When he handed it to me, it was 12 pages, single-spaced. "Is this enough?" he asked. "It's more than enough." He nodded. Then he said, "I should have told you the first day." "Yeah, you should have. But I told you. You told me, and that was enough. Not forgiveness exactly, but a door left open. That was enough." I took one more gamble. I asked Trevor Grant, the ex, the first target, if he'd be willing to put his story in writing. A statement for my attorney, a documented pattern. He didn't say yes right away. He thought about it for a week. I didn't push. I understood. This was a man who'd spent years rebuilding a life that Ashley had detonated, and asking him to go back into that wreckage, even on paper, was asking a lot. He called me on a Thursday night. "I'll do it," he said, "because nobody believed me the first time. Maybe they'll believe both of us." The custody evaluation was handled by a court-appointed psychologist named Dr. Janice Olson. She was thorough. She interviewed both of us separately, observed each of us with Olivia, reviewed every document both attorneys submitted, and talked to a list of witnesses that would have made a journalist jealous. Ashley's attorney put forward the story Ashley had been building for months. Devoted mother, emotionally abusive husband. She called a co-worker of Ashley's who said Ashley often seemed sad at work and once mentioned being afraid to go home. She called a neighbor who said I seemed cold and never smiled. Which, sure, I'm not a guy who grins at strangers on the sidewalk. That's not evidence of anything except being from the Midwest. Grant Holloway didn't attack Ashley. He didn't have to. He built me. Olivia's preschool teachers, 3 of them, testified that I attended every parent event, every pickup, every school play. One of them, a woman named Janet who'd been teaching for 25 years, said I was one of the most involved fathers I've seen in my career. My doctor submitted records showing clean blood work, no substance issues, no mental health flags. Dylan's statement went in. Jared's reluctant cooperation went in. Yes, Ashley had initiated the relationship. Yes, she had fed him false information about me. Yes, he had used it to try to block my promotion. And Trevor Grant's statement went in. 2 pages. A pattern. A second man 10 years earlier telling the same story I was telling now. Tara Mitchell didn't testify for either side. She refused to appear for Ashley, and she didn't volunteer for me, but her absence from Ashley's witness list said everything it needed to say. The friend who'd been there for every crisis, every tearful phone call, every girls' night, gone. That kind of absence has its own gravity in a courtroom. Doctor. Olson's report came back 6 weeks later. She described my parenting as consistent, stable, and child-focused. She noted that Ashley's accounts of our marriage contained significant inconsistencies when compared with corroborating evidence. And then there was the bomb. Midway through the proceedings, Ashley's attorney, Rachel Perkins, who was earning every dollar of her retainer, announced that Ashley was pregnant, that it was mine. The room went very quiet. Grant Holloway, to his credit, didn't flinch. He simply said, "Your Honor, we'd like to request a paternity test." Ashley withdrew the claim 2 days later, didn't explain, didn't address it, just withdrew it. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about what that told the evaluator. I know what it told me. The court granted joint legal custody, primary physical custody to me, with Ashley getting standard parenting time, The judge's language was measured and careful, the way judges are when they know they're writing something that will be read and reread. The court finds that the father has demonstrated a stable, consistent home environment. The court is concerned by inconsistencies in the mother's accounts of the marriage, which do not align with documentary evidence or corroborating testimony. Ashley sat perfectly still when the ruling was read. Her face was blank, not devastated, not relieved, not anything, just the screensaver, the neutral default. And I looked at her, and I didn't feel what I expected to feel. I didn't feel victory. I felt grief for the woman I'd married, for the person I thought she was, for 7 years of a life that turned out to be a draft of a building that was never going to be built. Jared Kellen resigned from Whitfield and Lane 3 weeks later, cleaned out his desk on a Friday afternoon. Nobody walked him out. Nobody said goodbye. Denise promoted me to full partner 6 months early. In the internal announcement, she wrote a single line that I've kept pinned to my office wall. Integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you think no one is. 14 months later, I'm in a different apartment, smaller than the house, one of those converted lofts near the river, but it gets good light. I built Olivia a window seat in her room. She sits there with Bandit the raccoon and watches the barges go by, and sometimes she narrates what she thinks the boats are carrying. That one has cookies, Dad. That one has dinosaurs. I never correct her. Dylan visits when he can. He's got a steady design job in Chicago, a real one with benefits and a desk and everything. He hasn't borrowed money in over a year. When he comes, he sleeps on the pullout and makes pancakes for Olivia in the morning, and they have a secret handshake that I'm not allowed to learn. That's fine. Some things are supposed to be just theirs. I got a call from Tara Mitchell a while back. She said, I owe you an apology for believing her, for not seeing it. I said, you saw it eventually. That's what matters. She was quiet for a second. Then, is Olivia okay? Olivia's great. Good. That's good. And Ashley, she lives across town now. She has Olivia every other weekend. I don't talk about her to Olivia, not a word. When Olivia comes back from her mother's house, I ask if she had fun, and I listen to whatever she tells me, and that's it. I will not make my daughter a battlefield. That's the one line. I'm at the office late tonight, drafting plans for a new community center, bigger than the library, more complex, the kind of project that keeps you up past midnight because the problems are interesting. Olivia's drawings are pinned to my wall right next to the blueprints. A purple house with a yellow door, a family of stick figures, 2 tall ones, 1 small one, and what I think is supposed to be Bandit. I look at them for a minute. Then I turn off the lamp and drive home.